in the vast emptiness of the Southern Ocean, where the horizon feels wider than anywhere else on Earth. A small fleet pressed onward under pale summer skies. It was 1788, and the ships Isle of Awning all carried the uneasy hope of a distant empire. Britain, swollen with prisoners and ambition, had decided to send this strange, reluctant expedition to the far end of the world. They called it the First Fleet. For 8 long months, the ships drifted across oceans whose names the convicts barely knew. The wooden decks smelled of salt, damp rope, fear. Nights were filled with restless breathing and the quiet sobs of men and women who had left behind everything sometimes, for crimes as small as a loaf of bread. Above them, the officers walked with steady steps, their eyes fixed on maps that showed more blank space than truth. Then, one morning in January, the coastline appeared, pale cliffs glowing under the rising sun, water as clear as polished stone, gum trees shimmering in a heat unlike anything they had known. Captain Arthur Phillips stood near the rail, the wind pulling at his coat. Before him stretched a land the British Empire barely understood, a continent ancient beyond comprehension, inhabited for tens of thousands of years. The fleet slipped into a sheltered inlet they would soon call Botany Bay. Smoke curled between the trees. Aboriginal families watched from the shore, silent, their expressions unreadable. They had seen strange sails before, but never an armada, like this, never a floating world carrying hundreds of foreign lives. When the first boats touched the sand, Philip stepped out carefully, the water swirling around his boots. There was no triumph in his expression, only the weight of responsibility. Behind him, convicts blinked in the sunlight, overwhelmed by the immensity of the land. The heat, the insects, the endless bush, it all felt otherworldly, a place carved by time alone. The British raised their flag, not with fanfare, but with the quiet seriousness of a decision that cannot be undone. They moved the fleet north to a small cove with deep water and fresh streams. Sydney Cove, they would name it, a settlement born not from ambition, but necessity. The meeting of worlds began slowly, shy gestures, misunderstandings, distant observations. No one that day could imagine what would come, the expansion, the conflicts, the irreversible change. But in that first soft light of an Australian dawn, as the gulls circled and the gum trees whispered in the warm wind, the British Empire planted its fragile beginnings on a continent older than memory,